My name is Ethan Brooks. The moment my sister raised her glass in front of more than 100 guests and called me the biggest burden in the family, the entire ballroom burst into laughter. What none of them knew was that less than an hour later, those same people would be so silent they could hear the hum of the air conditioning overhead. The engagement party was being held at a luxurious lakeside resort on the outskirts of Dallas. Golden lights shimmered across the water. Expensive suits and designer dresses drifted past one another to the sound of soft music. Everything looked perfect. At least, that was what the Brooks family wanted everyone to see. Ethan stood at the far end of the ballroom, alone in the middle of the crowd. He had spent nearly half a day driving to get there. 3 days earlier, his mother had called him. She said Chloe really wanted him there. She said it was an important family occasion. She said it was time for everyone to leave old misunderstandings behind. Ethan believed her. Or more accurately, he wanted to believe her. But only 5 minutes after walking into the ballroom, he realized he had made the same mistake again. His mother gave him nothing more than a brief nod when she saw him. His father shook hands with a few important guests and then turned away as if he did not recognize his own son. Then there was Chloe. Chloe Brooks moved through the crowd like the queen of the evening. The engagement ring on her finger attracted every eye in the room. The man standing beside her was Trevor Langford, the heir to Langford Logistics, a family whose name was known by almost everyone in Texas. When Chloe spotted Ethan, something in her smile changed. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the smile of someone who had just discovered that her favorite source of entertainment had arrived. "I thought you weren't coming," Chloe said. Her voice sounded gentle, but anyone who knew her understood that there was always a sharp edge beneath that softness. "Mom said you wanted me here." "Oh," Chloe laughed softly. "So Mom can still convince you after all." Trevor smirked beside her. He did not greet Ethan. He did not offer a handshake. He barely looked at him for more than a few seconds. To Trevor, Ethan simply did not exist. None of this was new. For years, Ethan had always been the one overlooked by his family. When Chloe graduated from college, the family threw a huge celebration. When Ethan received his first professional achievement award, nobody even asked about it. When Chloe launched her own company, their parents bragged about it for months. What nobody knew was that the original business idea had come from Ethan. He never told anyone. He never argued. He never demanded recognition. Over time, his silence became proof in other people's minds that he was weak. The party continued. Laughter and conversation filled the ballroom. Then it was time for the speeches. Chloe stepped onto the stage. She thanked her friends. She thanked her business partners. She thanked the Langford family. Everything seemed perfect. Until she suddenly turned toward Ethan. The smile on her face widened. "Everyone knows I'm the luckiest person in the Brooks family. Lucky to have wonderful parents. Lucky to have met Trevor. And lucky because I learned exactly who I never wanted to become." The room erupted with laughter. Chloe raised her glass. "Especially my brother. The only person in the family who still hasn't accomplished anything worth talking about." The laughter grew louder. A few guests turned to look at Ethan. Some looked at him with pity, some with curiosity, some with amusement. Ethan said nothing. He simply stood there. His expression remained strangely calm. That only seemed to satisfy Chloe even more. But at that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. An older man walked inside. Every executive from Langford Logistics immediately rose to their feet. It was William Langford, the chairman of the company, Trevor's father, the most powerful man in the room. He took only a few steps before suddenly stopping. His eyes locked onto Ethan. The smile vanished from his face. The color drained from it as well. The entire ballroom began to fall silent. Trevor frowned. Chloe looked confused. Ethan's parents exchanged puzzled glances. William Langford slowly walked forward. He stared at Ethan as though he had just seen someone who was never supposed to be there. Then, in a voice so low that the entire room could still hear it, he asked, "Ethan Brooks, why are you here?" In an instant, every laugh disappeared. No one answered William Langford's question. A strange silence settled over the ballroom. Trevor was the first to speak. "Dad, do you know him?" William never took his eyes off Ethan. It was not the look of a man seeing a stranger. It was the look of a man who had just come face to face with the biggest problem of his life. "Ethan Brooks." He repeated the name again. This time his voice was lower. "What are you doing here?" Trevor laughed. He thought his father was joking. "He's my fiancé's brother. He's nobody important." Wrong. William cut him off. Completely wrong. The smile froze on Trevor's face. For the first time that evening, Chloe felt uneasy. For years, she had looked at Ethan like he was nothing more than a shadow. But now the most powerful man in the Langford family was staring at him as though he was the one controlling the room. William took another step forward. The color had visibly drained from his face. Ethan. Which files are you handling? Ethan looked at him for a few seconds. For the first time that night, he did not avoid anyone's gaze. Southline Logistics. William's entire body stiffened. Then Horizon Freight. Then Blue River Transport. Each company name landed like a hammer blow against the last pieces of his composure. Trevor frowned. Those companies are all partners of Langford Logistics. Dad, what's going on? William did not answer. Because he knew exactly what was happening. And Ethan knew even more. For months, he had not simply been investigating transportation companies. He had been following the trail of millions of dollars hidden behind dozens of complex transactions. Money that disappeared from reports. Companies that existed only on paper. Accounts opened under other people's names. Every trail led to the same destination. Langford Logistics. Chloe shook her head. I don't understand. What are you talking about? Ethan turned toward his sister. There was no anger in his eyes. That somehow irritated Chloe even more. Her entire life, she had wanted a reaction from him. She wanted to see him angry. She wanted to see him hurt. She wanted to see him break. But he had never given her that satisfaction. He simply watched. Quietly. Patiently. Just like he was doing now. Do you remember your first business plan? Chloe froze. A flicker of panic crossed her face. Their parents immediately looked toward her. That was the project that had made Chloe famous in the startup community years ago. What do you mean? Chloe asked. I mean, I wrote it. The air seemed to solidify. Ethan's mother immediately stepped forward. Ethan, this is not the time. Not the time to tell the truth? He asked. She fell silent. Trevor could feel everything slipping out of control. He turned toward his father. Say something. William remained silent. Because the phone in his pocket had just vibrated. Once. Then a second time. A moment later, the chief financial officer's phone lit up. Then the head of legal. One by one, expressions around the executive table began to change. Shock. Concern. Fear. Ethan glanced at his watch. Almost time. His voice remained calm. William closed his eyes. He knew exactly what was about to happen. At that very moment, flashing red and blue lights appeared beyond the resort's glass windows. One vehicle. Then a second. Then a third. The entire ballroom turned toward the entrance. The music stopped. The servers stood frozen. Trevor suddenly felt his throat go dry. Chloe instinctively tightened her grip around her engagement ring. William Langford lowered himself into the nearest chair. For the first time in his life, he looked less like a powerful businessman and more like a tired old man. Ethan slowly scanned the room. He looked at his parents. He looked at his sister. He looked at the people who had laughed at him less than 30 minutes earlier. Then he spoke. You always thought I stayed silent because I was weak. The truth is, I stayed silent because I was working. And what I found is about to change the lives of everyone in this room. At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. Several men in dark suits stepped inside. The badges on their jackets reflected beneath the lights. No one was laughing anymore. 7 weeks after that engagement party, no one in Dallas spoke about the Langford family with the same admiration as before. The news first appeared in local newspapers and then spread quickly. Official investigations were announced. Several major contracts were suspended. Strategic partners began pulling away almost immediately. The people who once stood in line to shake William Langford's hand no longer answered his calls. The empire he had spent decades building began to show its first cracks. And everyone knew those cracks would continue to spread. Trevor Langford was hit the hardest. The board forced him to step away from his management role while the investigation continued. Many of the projects he once oversaw were handed to other executives. For the first time in his life, Trevor found himself facing a reality that his family's money could not immediately fix. But that was not what hurt him the most. 3 days after the party, Chloe called off the engagement herself. Not because she had suddenly become stronger, but because she realized that the future she had always dreamed of was collapsing right in front of her eyes. She had believed she chose the right man. She had believed she was stepping into a perfect life. Now all that remained were unfinished plans. The engagement ring sat forgotten inside a drawer. Wedding invitations that had never been mailed were torn apart. Congratulations turned into uncomfortable questions. For the first time in her life, Chloe understood what it felt like to become the center of judgment. Something Ethan had endured for years. Across town, the Brooks family was not doing much better. The house that had once been filled with noise had become strangely quiet. Ethan's father spoke less than ever before. He often sat alone in his office for hours without turning on the lights. Every time he saw his son's name on television or in a newspaper article, he remembered all the years he had chosen to look away. He remembered every time Ethan was criticized. Every time he knew his son was right but remained silent. That silence had become the heaviest burden he carried. Ethan's mother had changed as well. She called him several times. For the first time in many years, not to criticize him. Not to ask for anything. Only to see how he was doing. But some distances cannot disappear after a few phone calls. One weekend afternoon, while cleaning out an old storage room, Ethan's father discovered a dusty box. Inside were documents from years earlier. Sketches. Notes. Handwritten business plans. Every page carried the same name. Ethan Brooks. He sat there staring at them for a very long time. Because those papers were the original project that had helped Chloe earn praise as a young business prodigy years ago. At last, the truth surfaced. No one argued. No one denied it. The entire family was forced to confront the things they had spent years ignoring. As for Ethan, his life entered an entirely new chapter. A month later, he received a promotion. His new office was in Washington, a position he had worked toward for many years. On the day he received his appointment, Ethan stood by the window overlooking the city. The sky was clear. Everything felt strangely peaceful. He did not feel victorious. He did not feel triumphant. He simply felt relieved. Because he no longer had to prove who he was. The people who had underestimated him had finally seen the truth for themselves. And sometimes, that is the greatest form of justice. For years, they believed Ethan's silence was a sign of weakness. But they were wrong. He was not silent because he was afraid. He was not silent because he was powerless. He was silent because he was watching, learning, preparing. And when the moment finally arrived, he did not need to raise his voice to prove his worth. Because the truth had been speaking for him all along. Thank you for staying until the end of Ethan's story. Sometimes the people who underestimate us the most are the ones who never take the time to see who we truly are. Ethan spent years being ignored, judged, and dismissed. Yet he never stopped growing, learning, and preparing for his moment. In the end, the truth spoke louder than any argument ever could. What would you have done if you were Ethan? Would you forgive your family? Or would you walk away and never look back? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more powerful family drama stories just like this one.